It's always different every time. That's crucial. You need to get that sweet spot of maximum credibility and maximum empathy. Now, always learn from your enemies. So what you want to do is familiarize yourself with the Darth Vader of neoliberalism. His name is Mark Littlewood, right? And he's the media spokesperson for the Institute for Economic Affairs. Okay? Sounds really great. Institute for Economic Affairs. They must know what they're talking about. Of course they don't. They're funded by the tobacco industry, the fossil fuel industry, the arms industry. They are specifically designed to make the public think everything is fine. So he has had tens of thousands spent on training him. And he's spooky as hell. Because when Mark Littlewood's on the box or on radio, you listen to him, and he's saying things like, yes, that's true. Half of the world is owned by 8 men. But when you think about it, that's not too bad. You know, we could have a worse. And you walk away going, yeah, Mark makes sense. No, he doesn't. It's outrageous that half the world's owned by 8 people. But Mark is so good at sounding credible, and for some weird high training that he's got, spooky training, he sounds like, yeah, he makes me feel good. Okay? Terrifying guy, Mark Littlewood. But this is how we operate. Mark's faking it, and we're not. But if we just use empathy, we're not going to get there. We have to be credible too. Okay? So, Mark Littlewood, Darth Vader. So we're going to start off with that one. So credibility and empathy sweet spot. Okay, I've got a star system. I'm sure you're all very impressed. All right. And I've already told you about Mark, the Darth Vader. So that's really important. Number 2. In fact, let's get spooky. Let's get arty and do this. I was thinking about that earlier. Okay. So there you go, the star system, the back of the chair star system. Good God, that's where we're going, baby. All right, now the next one. Let's go for this. We all have an auntie or an uncle or a neighbour who's so embarrassing. They are racist, they are angry, they hate young people, they're super critical of anyone who stands up for themselves. They're the people that you've got to work with. There's no point in us just talking to our own circle, okay? And you know, as always, the youth are ahead in so many ways. And there was a launch of a political platform 3 years ago, and I worked with a lot of youth activists. And this political platform said, oh, can you bring some of the young people along? So I brought along my gang, and 500 people in a room, average age 50, average paper The Guardian, average coffee, latte, whatever that is. And then there's my crew over here, okay? And they'd forgotten about my crew. And then right at the end, they were saying, right, everybody, thank you so much for coming to the meeting. You know, like, what we like to do, could you all go home and speak to 5 friends and tell them about the movement so we can build the movement? And then they go, oh, Jamie's brought the young people. Hey, everybody, let's hear from the young people. They're the next generation. Come on in, come on in, come on in, come on in. Yeah. Speaking of the young generation, brilliant. I was just training some XR youth earlier. They're the bomb, I'm telling you now. So they, okay. What's your name? So at the time, Bluebell was 14. What's your name? My name's Bluebell. How old are you? 14. Oh, everyone, Bluebell's 14. She's the future. She's the future. Well, Bluebell, what would you like to tell everyone? What did you think about the meeting? Without missing a beat, she takes the microphone. She says, you've just told everyone to go home and tell 5 friends about the movement. Is that right? They go, yeah. She said, you're not going to go anywhere. Why not? It's only when you tell people to go home and talk to 5 enemies about the movement that you build a movement. And that was a 15-year-old. And there was this gasp in the room. And then everyone was crowding round the young people afterwards going, oh, my God, you're so wise. No, you lot are so stupid. Come on. So the point I'm making is Bluebell is right. You need to know your audience. You need to target the embarrassing neighbour. You need to be able to talk to people who think it's a load of crap about worrying about carbon. You need to be able to talk to people who say, how dare you tell me how I should live my life? I'm going to eat meat. F you. You know, I worked really hard all this year. I'm going to fly. Don't you dare tell me how to live. You need to be able to talk to people in this way or talk with people in this way. And when you start developing that practice, you know the way to develop that practice? You listen to them for a really, really long time. Okay? So know your audience runs deep. It's not just being able to talk to the embarrassing neighbour, the horrifically embarrassing auntie who gets drunk and turns racist every Christmas. It's also just the average people who ain't got no time, man. You need to think about Mark. This is who I always talk about, Mark. So you're on TV. TV's over there, okay? Mark's over here doing the ironing, man. He's doing the ironing, TV on in the background, sound turned down. Your gig in your 3 minutes on The Matthew Wright Show is to get him, right, put down the bloody ironing, come over, turn up the sound, actually get a notepad and pen and write down what you're saying. So I'm going to show you how you can make that happen, all right? So think of Mark. Think of the people who are too busy. You know, they've got their mortgage, they've got their kids, life's a nightmare, I'm working my arse off, my wife hates me. Think about all the people who just, there's too much for me to deal with. So how do you make it their struggle? How do you make it their story, okay? So know your audience, think about your audience. There's a huge difference between being on the Daily Politics show, which I was on, or on the Matthew Wright, the right stuff, okay, or Good Morning Britain, totally different audiences. So pitch to those audiences, do your research, okay? So let's do Steal Their Thunder, Take It to the Bridge. Okay, this is a great one. It's a kind of James Brown number. Take it to the bridge. Take it to the bridge, okay? So we're using this a lot at the moment. And what that is on average, you've got about 3 minutes. So on average, you've got about 3 minutes in the show. And very often, they've done the research, take it to the... Oh, no, your audience was the last one, yeah. So on average, say 3 minutes. Don't be beholding in this situation. Don't go, oh my God, I've got to be very precious with this. I'm so lucky to be on. No, this is direct action. This is just a gig. You're there to do a job, okay? Don't be beholding. Don't be in awe, all right? A classic example of that was on Channel 5 when I was on the Matthew Wright show. You know, I was terrified. I was talking about Occupy in 2011. Right? I was terrified. I'd never done anything like that before, right? Massive audience. I didn't have a TV. I didn't even know he existed, all right? But... you know, before me, it was Jo. She's just come out of Big Brother, talking about who she was snogging, right? And then go from Jo snogging, right, to whoever she was snogging in the Big Brother. And then, oh, now, you know, this guy called Jamie talking about Occupy London, 3 minutes. My 3 minutes were up. Thank you, Jamie. And now, gastric bands. Yeah? You are just content. And if you have that mentality, I am just content, you tend to be less precious. And then you flow better, basically, all right? However, they're going to go for you. They're going to go for you very often. You're going to be on with another guest, and their job is to bring you down, okay? Or the presenter, you know, 8 people. I mean, Sky News, they've got 8 people in that ear. 8 people working out how to screw over this guest if you're speaking up for rebels. So what you want to do, if they're going to waste your 3 minutes, if they're going to ask you some stupid question, oh, I see that in 1992 you were done for drink and driving or something, yeah? Okay? Or... Is Heathrow Pause, isn't it really just a front for Extinction Rebellion? Anything that's you're going to waste your time, bridge. Look, I think that's an important question, but I think what your audience need to know is this, okay? Or, okay, well, I'm glad you've asked that, but aren't you forgetting, and just own it. If you don't want to answer that, you don't have to. It's gastric bands next, yeah? So just, if you don't want to waste your time on that question, bridge to something else. I think that's an interesting question, but I think what your audience would be more interested in is this, okay? Own it all the time. If you learn not to be precious about it, then you're going to have a much more fruitful, useful experience. So that's take it to the bridge. Are you timing me, Daddy-O? Yeah. Cool. This one is also really annoying for them, and it's one of the best. This is called Steal Their Thunder, okay? Steal Their Thunder. You do your research, by the way, folks, when you get these opportunities. Do your research, all right? So let's say you're on with I was on with Mark Littlewood, all right? I was on with Mark Littlewood, which is great because I had done the research on Mark Littlewood, yeah? So what you do is Steal Their Thunder is, what are they going to say? What's the main point they're going to say to try and bring you down? And you say it first. That's what's magic, all right? So, yeah, no, thank you. It's really good to be on the show again, Jeremy, and it's a real pleasure to be with you, Mark. I've looked at your work. I'm very aware of the Institute for Economic Affairs. And, you know, obviously, Mark, what you're going to say is that the capitalism and the way that it is really the best system that we've got. But if you actually look at what's happening to the world, it isn't. You know, and I worded it better, but what I'm saying is this. I take what he's going to say, and I say it first, and then I come out with some common sense that flattens it. So what happens is the person who thought that they were in control and they were going to flatten you suddenly are gulping like a fish out of water because you just said what they had planned to say. So stealing their thunder really works, okay? And that's down to your research. What will they be saying against you? You know, you're blocking a bridge, or you've come out of court, right? So so what questions would they ask you? What questions would they be asking this husband and wife about? You've come out of court. Do you feel glad about what you've done? They'll be asking you that. Do you feel proud? Or do you have regrets now? Okay? Just think about what they're going to ask you. The guy from the Economics Affair, it was easy. You know, he was going to argue about the fact that the way that neoliberal capitalism is working is absolutely fine for the world. So it was easy to steal his thunder. You know, if you're talking about fracking, I mean, bloody hell, it got so predictable. We're talking about fracking. It was always, yeah, but we've got to keep the lights on. So say that line before they can. You know, when we were doing the April Rebellion, we got a gift, man, because every time we were being interviewed, they were saying, what about the disruption to everyday life? These people are trying to get to work. What about the disruption to everyday life? Every interview, what about the disruption? And then this genius in the crew said, you know what, I woke up this morning and I got the best answer. Yes, we are disruptive. But we are disruptive in the same way that a fire alarm is disruptive when it wakes you up in the middle of the night to let you know your house is on fire. What an answer. And do you know what? They just stopped bloody asking us that, because all of us were using that line, yeah? So, steal their thunder, take it to the bridge. I keep saying this one's my favourite, but so many of them are my favourite, actually. So I'm going to do my favourite. This is a cracker, okay? And it looks weird. Stretches, smiles, stabs, okay? So this really works, and it looks weird, but it's super important. So before you do your radio or TV opportunity, go to a toilet. Go to the smallest room possible that's closest to the studio as possible. And you get in the toilet and you stretch. Not stretch like yoga stretch, but try and touch the ceiling. Try and touch the ceiling, and then with this foot, that wall, and then with this hand, try and touch the top of the toilet bowl, and stretch like that, and then do this. I'm going to see if I can get this leg on that wall, and then keep spinning around, touching the sides of this small room. And it's magic, see? Because what happens is when you walk out, whether you're radio or TV, when you walk out, you have done a psychological trick on yourself, which works on the audience. Your body commands the space. You have this amazing grace, okay, and stillness and control and power. You're measured. It's weird, but it's only because you like occupied a toilet, right? But psychologically, it's done that to your body. But more importantly, Mark's doing the ironing, see? And you come out, right? Sound's turned down. You come out and you sit down, and there's something about your posture, your calmness, your physical certitude that makes Mark go, well, she's interesting. I don't know what she's saying, but she knows what she's talking about. She's commanding that space. All right? And this works. Second one is smiles. Obviously, if you're talking about the very severe risk of billions dying in the global south, you don't smile. But what you do, okay, cool. So what you do is you keep a lightness in your face, a lightness, okay? So, you know, have you really thought this through? Have you really thought about what it's like to go to prison, okay? Well, of course I have, because you wouldn't take this risk unless you thought it through. But the fact is, I'm also very aware of the science of what's coming, and we have tried everything else. We really have. And this is the last that we've got, the last thing we've got left to do. So you see my face the whole time has got this brightness, okay? Mark's putting down his iron. You're sitting there in command, you're smiling, you've got this lightness in your face. Whoever she is, man, she knows what she's talking about. She's bloody marvellous. I'm putting the iron down right now. I'm going to turn the sound up and I'm going to listen. That's smiles and stretches. And then stabs is a beauty. So stabs, you're in the green room and you're waiting to go on the show. Very often you'll have another guest with you. Be shy, yeah? Say, have you done this before? More often than not, they're professionals. Yeah, I've been on loads. God, I haven't done it before. I'm really scared. I'm finding this really difficult. And then you start asking questions. So the best example that I did was a young guy from an educational think tank, okay? And I was saying, and he was saying, yeah, I've done it loads of times. And I was saying, well, so how did you get into an educational think tank? That's a really interesting job, right? And he was saying, oh, well, I went to Oxford and blah, 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 blah. And I was saying, wow, so how do they work, these educational think tanks? So do you go into schools a lot? Do you work with teenagers in schools a lot? And he was going, well, no, we don't do it that way. It's mainly based on all the research that comes from around the world, blah, blah, blah. And I was going, oh, okay. You know, and then it's like, okay, we've got to go on now. And I was saying, you know, good luck, thank you, nice to meet you, you know. And we go on the show, and Jeremy Vine says, right, this is going to be very interesting. So we've got a debate. Jamie Kelsey-Fry, secondary school teacher, and Ian Tomlinson from educational think tank, and we're going to have this debate about academies. And I went, well, hold on, Jeremy, just to be clear for the audience, I don't think you can call it a debate. Because this guy, basically, he's an educational think tank, but he has not been in a school, and he does not listen to children. I'm a teacher, so where's the debate? This guy here is just falling off his seat, horrified, yeah? But it doesn't matter in this instance. I'm a nice guy generally, but that's okay to stab. You've got someone who's highly trained from BP saying, we're doing fine, yeah? Stab him. All right, nearly done, 3 minutes, is that right, darling? Yeah. All right, so key messaging. Key messaging, right, so interesting story. In Outfoxed, it's called. So it's a documentary about Rupert Murdoch and people who used to work for Murdoch, and it's about Fox News in particular. And when the Twin Towers went down, I can't remember the name of the guy, but who was the really, really evil guy in Fox News who's left? Glenn something. Okay, let's call him Glenn, doesn't matter. So anyway, Glenn was a legendary, nasty piece of work. Twin Towers went down. Glenn's researchers obviously went, let's find a young person whose dad or mum died in the Twin Towers. Let's get him on the show, and let's really tug the heartstrings of the country and make them hate all Muslims. Yeah, good idea. But they chose the wrong 15-year-old. This guy, his dad had died in the Twin Towers, yeah? And yet this guy was a very thinking kid. Obviously, he's heartbroken he's lost his dad. But he knew what Glenn was going to do with that show. And so this young guy did his research. He worked out, I have 9 seconds before this guy's going to try and kill me. I've got 9 seconds on live TV on Fox News to get across a message that he won't be expecting. So let's break it down, 9 seconds. Okay, I'm going to be able to make 3 points in 9 seconds using roughly 27, 30 words. Okay? And that's what he did. He basically worked out a message that was, I can't repeat the exact message, but basically it was saying, look, I love my dad, and I'm heartbroken that I've lost my dad. But I would be letting him down if I didn't say that America has to take some responsibility for the hatred that's being pointed at it, because it's going around the world under the guise of bringing democracy, where really they're stealing oil and murdering civilians. He made that very powerful message, all right? And he got it out within 9 seconds. Cuts to adverts, and the story goes that, you know, Glenn's going crazy, bring the young guy over into the green room, okay, and then Glenn's coming over, he's just going to have him, you know, and they had to pull Glenn off this young guy because the young guy made such a powerful point that was controversial and against what Fox News wanted to hear. So the reason I'm putting out 3927, it's a brilliant messaging technique that everyone should have. Not just if you're on media, if you're going on the radio, if you're being interviewed by a paper, if you're going on TV, but if you're on a demo, they might stick a mic in your face. Don't go, okay? Or don't speak really fast and nervously. You've got it in your head. You know, an economic system based on infinite growth, which relies on finite resources, is the work of morons. The end. Keep it short and tight, and you make a great point. And they can't edit it and make you look like an idiot. Okay, a minute left, is that cool? Okay, so I'm going to leave out just very quickly. When you're on the radio or TV, right, and someone asks you a question, and then the guest is going, and there's paper all over the shop. Hold on, I've got it here somewhere. No good, no good, no good. This is all you're allowed. That size, A5, all right? And there's the smile. Remind yourself to smile. Up here, who is the presenter and the guests? Because it's really embarrassing if you suddenly have a mind fug and forget Jon Snow's called Jon Snow. And then you do your 3927. What's your main thing that you've come here for? What's your main point? Okay, what we call your top line. Okay? Now, when people get good at this, you watch them, you'll go, there's her top line. She said it twice. She's so good. Yeah? Because that's all you're there. It's direct action. Okay? Don't be beholding. You're there to do some direct action. Okay? You're just getting out your message. Don't be beholding. Okay, so you're 3927. And then, you know, when it's... make it a struggle. Okay, don't worry about that. And the other thing is this, stats. So we can get really lost in stats, okay? You can reel off loads of stuff that you read from the United Nations or latest scientific research. It doesn't really work with the audience. What works with the audience is pictures. So with the anti-fracking movement, you know, if you say, well, you know, if they poison the aquifer, that's 740,000 litres of water. What the hell is 740,000 litres of water? But if you say 1,900 Olympic swimming pools of water, the audience goes, shit, that's loads, man. You know, I worked on the anti-HS2 movement. It's going to cost £100 billion, okay? And I was working with train spotters. People are totally into trains, man, so they've got a really brilliant mind. And this guy rings me up. He says, because I gave him this training. He said, I just worked out a pictorial way of talking about £100 billion, Jamie. You know what? Isn't it amazing? If you basically put a pile of £50 notes on every chair in Wembley Stadium as high as a double-decker bus, that's what £100 billion looks like. It's like, yes! You know, if you say £100 billion, yeah, the audience will go, yeah, that's terrible. But if you say so much money that it's £50 notes stacked as high as a double-decker bus on every chair in Wembley Stadium, the audience is going, are you kidding? That's tons. So make it visual so the audience really get this key point. What we've been using with XR during April anyway was the Bering Straits between Atlantic and Pacific. Their winter, it flooded at winter. That's not meant to happen until 2090. The same week, in fact, the day after that report came out, the first report about the permafrost melting. The permafrost is melting at a rate that it shouldn't be doing for 70 years. Yeah? And then the triple whammy that gets the audience is even the measuring instruments that they've got on the North Pole and the South Pole to measure how quickly the ice is melting, they've lost them because the ice has already melted and all the instruments have sunk. If you say stuff like that, that's a bomb to the audience because they really visualize it. It becomes visceral. Remember this, right? Audiences generally carry away what you made them feel. Not so much what you made them think, but what you made them feel, okay? So this is really important. So imagery like, you know, they're bound to say to you, because you've worked out, you're prepared, you can anticipate they're going to say, I would think you'll find that the government's doing ever such a lot to do with climate breakdown, and you should think of China instead. So a good response is, look, the level of work that the government is doing to try and address climate breakdown is simply rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, all right? That image for the public, they go, bloody hell. You know, in their head, what can they see? You know, a massive cruise liner smashing into an iceberg, and what are they doing? People are just, let's just rearrange the chairs, everything will be fine. You know, in one image, you've really slammed it through. Okay? Okay, so you've got your prep card, your 3927. There's your prep card. Very, very, very quickly, please don't do this without telling everybody you've ever met in your life, because you should tell your pals. When you're on the radio, you've got a situation where people will phone in afterwards. Well, you phone in, your mates phone in. You know, don't get your mum to phone in and your mum goes, I'm so proud of Jonathan. Okay, don't do that, okay? Mum just phones in saying, yeah, I'm a housewife from Dorchester, and that guest is right. That guest is right. We just had someone on radio last week talking about one of the actions that's coming up, and everybody who phoned in was going, she's fantastic. She's absolutely right. And it's scary, you know. Go on social media, because you're going to get idiots on social media going, get a job, you know. So get your mates on there saying, no, he's a teacher, for God's sake. He has a job. Don't you realise how serious this is? So that people look at the social media and go, actually, man, there's a whole wave of people in support of this, yeah. You know, mum can phone, but just don't say, I'm so proud of my daughter. Tell your pals. Stretch your stabs. So there's a film, Extinction Rebellion have a film of the media training that's got me pontificating. But this is a rare time, because I've only been able to persuade Ronan to do this once before, and it was in the dark, and hardly anyone saw it. But I really I don't want to big you up too much, but never mind. He is the guy who's run the media for Extinction Rebellion. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the media has been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal, from top to bottom. He runs an amazing team. And the thing is, all the stuff I'm talking about means nothing unless you've got people in your M&M teams who know how to get you on the TV and the radio and in the papers in the first place, right? That's his gig. Over to my good brother, Ronan McNern. Needs to keep talking to that, sweetheart.
Thank you, Jamie. That's my activist dad. It's because of him I came back. Well, no. So my background is in public relations, and I worked in PR agencies and then freelance in the last 20 years or whatever, and I was not political, not an ounce, but I did do the odd arty or cultural thing, and then in around 2010 I got really pissed off with a number of things. I saw the students out at Millbank, and it was like, yeah, actually, I'm going to do something. And then I started Queer Resistance, which was a group that campaigned against the cuts, the austerity cuts, bringing queer people together as a community group, and also doing really fun things, working with UK and CUT. And then Occupy came along. What often happens is that first bit of activism is to do with a single issue cause that really is like, this is my thing. And then you realize, oh, actually there's that. There's all of these other things happening, and they're all connected. And then Occupy came along, and that's where I met Jamie. And there was me and one other person in particular who were kind of central in this horizontal movement, and we of Occupy London, Occupy in London. We made lots of mistakes. We did some things really well. There were a lot of learnings from that. There was a space of hope that was opened up, and then later despair. And I went through an addiction. I had to leave London. I had to step away from things. I went to live in a commune, and I connected with my dog, nature, loved making marmalades and chilling out. And then I thought I'd never come back to activism, to public relations. Public relations, certainly, it was like, this is bullshit. But still, he was saying, hey, there's stuff coming. But then I got the call to come to a festival last year, and I saw things about Extinction Rebellion. I was like, I don't want to know about that. And then I got the call, and hey, they need someone to work in or to do the media team. And I was like, yeah, that's for me. And there was just something, I didn't know much about it, but there was something just here in my body that was saying, this is it, and there's something coming. And it was just small steps to begin with. And what has happened is, I joined a team of 8, and that team has become now a team of 30, 40 who are working all the time. And then we've got a wider team of somewhere between 120 and 150 people. And that's just national, never mind all of the people working and doing stuff locally. So it's just growing phenomenally, and it's definitely not just because I'm amazing, or it's an honor and a privilege to be put in the position where I have been. But that it's just, and it's also like, we have one of the most amazing stories to tell, to communicate to people, and it's so fucking bittersweet that the first press conference we did, when we had the BBC, Roger Harben there, and the Guardian there and whatnot, we broke through back in November last year, and we got their interest, and I cried all the way walking home after that, because it was just, wow, this is amazing. Something amazing has happened. Lizia, a young girl, literally stood up to Roger Harben when and I've got much respect for Roger Harben. He asked the question of so, what you mean is that people won't be able to do Google searches on their phones. And there were 10 of us, or people up the front, and they all gave kind of good answers, but it was all a bit floundery. And but often with Extinction Rebellion, we have to go into that space where we're vulnerable. And this is where the heart comes in really strong. I mean, Lizia, after about 10 minutes, she came back to this question, and she's not tall, and she's not from the UK. Is it Malaysia originally? Yeah, 18. And she stood forward. She said, I want to answer your question. No, she said, your question really troubled me. What about me? What about my future? You're worried about your future and stuff, but I've got to live through this. And it was just the most wow experience. And later on, Roger, he came up and he said to some people that he was back in Genoa, or Copenhagen, was it? Yeah. Copenhagen, that's right. Yeah, he lost morale about our hope, and just Lizia, that that in that press conference, she shook him up. And that's what I think Extinction Rebellion is doing again and again and again, whether we're disrupting on the streets, creating that little pause for people to think and have that moment of time out from normal life, or from the beautiful, one of the dilemma actions that we're doing with the government. It puts them in that situation of, do they come down violently or do they not, and how do they deal with this when it grows, and all of this. We're creating these beautiful things that put little blocks in and stop normal life, and it's amazing to see how that's mushrooming around the world, and the sun doesn't set on Extinction Rebellion anymore. So sorry, that's a very long intro. I wanted to just really touch on just the bigger picture. And so some of the stuff I want to say today is going to be just a top line kind of, this is how we put together some of our campaigns. And it's not just me. There's a really brilliant team who work across this, and the national for XR. We have a press team, we have a social team who do the social media and whatnot. The live stream, the Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram, all of those things. Sorry, the press team deals with working to the traditional media and really communicating our message there. The content team, they make our videos. They also do, there's an editorial writing service which is really it's just begun and growing and is amazing. We have the growing content team, which is becoming less about actions, more about what narratives do we need to tell. And it just the international. There's so many other bits to this. The newsletter team, so it is growing phenomenally. So just picking up on where Jamie was talking about key messages. So from one of the things when we like going into October or going towards an action, we always think about, well, what are the key messages? And what's really useful is to think of do a 1-pager or a 2-pager, it doesn't really matter, of what are those key points that we want to get across, so that then when it goes to traditional media or to social media or to content, whether you're making a video or something, so you've got like those key messages that you want to come through in everything that you do. So with XR, we made it 5 messages. We cheated slightly, and this is one thing I really love about XR, and it's we can break all of the bloody rules because we are telling the story, the most horrible story about what is happening. And this is the moment for poetry. This is the moment for anything that really shakes the journalist, shakes the public, not just the dilemma or disruptive actions. Is in our communications, we need to do that too. So we had five key messages for those spokespeople going out during the rebellion. The first one, was speak from the heart. And this was why we did 5, because it was really easy to remember on one hand. So speak from the heart. What's your truth? Why are you here? So why are you disrupting millions of people, Londoners today? So the really good technique on this, and it's Roger Hallam. He taught me this technique, much as I wish I'd done it. It was from me, but it's like peeling back the onion. So I could ask you. And literally we did this. Why are you here disrupting millions of Londoners today?
Because my grandson wants to love the world.
Because my grandson wants to love the world. So what we actually did, there was about 10 or so of us. We asked that question over and over again between us. And you spoke beautifully from the heart. But sometimes we're quite head-based, and we would start with the science or whatever. But actually what we realized was in listening to each other, and we all ended up crying in all honesty, but was actually we got to our own truths. And we were like, wow, that really resonates with me. And for me, personally, the one that you know, I realized that when I said, you know, I'm here because I'm worried about the future for my niece. And you know, that was the one that connected with my heart, my vulnerability, the real reason I'm here. So there's a reason why we chose that as the first, and then the emergency the second, as a key point. Because if you start from your heart, if Mark, who's there at home doing the ironing, connects with you on that level and hears that, then they're going to listen a bit more. Whereas, you know, it's quite easy to do the science or whatnot. And actually, sorry, it's not easy. It's easy to go wrong with the science. It's easy to say the wrong fact and then get in a mess there. So, but when you speak from the heart, no, you can own it. From the heart, then the emergency. So it's then widening up into to what is actually happening. And what I would say to any spokespeople out there, any people planning right now, is I don't think that people, when we talk now about the climate and ecological emergency, or actually the way we prefer to talk about it would be the ecological and climate emergency. And we try to do it, but then the media always choose climate or whatnot. But actually, I think it's becoming a meaningless phrase, and we need to go deeper. So you know, absolutely, Jamie nailed it before, like talking about some of those examples and bringing it home. And also, you know, the biodiversity bit is really important, because actually a lot of people out there are not so affected by what's happening in the Amazon or in Africa, but they are affected by what's happening down the road from them. So you know, if you are talking, or you know, make sure to get that an example about what's happening locally, because then the person at home will identify with that. You know, our trees are going, you can see it, and then that enables you to then connect it to the wider. So it goes back to that, you know, that single issue that gets people up and out. I've got to do something on this. So then we had our heart, emergency, and then our three demands. So climate emergency truth, 2025, and Citizens Assembly. So those were quite easy to remember, and you can. I think what we're going to do next, or what we need to do next, is those demands have been communicated quite well, and also replicated all around the world and adapted. So probably in the next stage, it might not be exactly like this, but what we want to do is do like bullet points under each of those demands. So actually, what does that first demand mean? So we need to communicate now that it's not just the government, that it is other institutions, the media, engineering, whatever. They need to tell the truth. And really, you know, the government hasn't declared a climate and ecological emergency. Parliament has, and that means very little. So it's in the next iteration. We were not going to change the demands, but we're going to drill down into actually what does this mean. So that then, whether it's the local campaign groups or somebody speaking, they will have the opportunity to then, you know, go down deeper into the story, because we've got the first bit, we've got in the door, and that just actually makes me think I mean, from April, didn't we do fucking amazing? You know, all of those demands, bits of them have been met, and that, you know, the public, the government, everything, you know, XR has been legitimized, and now what a privilege it is for us in these times to be able to take that next step. And it's like we'd had a hit single with the Brits, a hit album, broke through, and now we're known. The next step, the second album, is really difficult. So this is why this summer I went through a really hard time, and it feels like, oh God! But I know that, you know, the team are working on things, and it's all. But for me personally, I've been kind of hit by grief about what's happening. I saw a video by a guy called Arthur Keller, and it hit me. It's like there's this, and all of us are going through this, and the public are going to go through it too. So we got that experience. Oof. But it really, we have that disruptive action, and now we need to balance the vision and the disruption and the emergency. And now the next thing really is the emergence, the truth telling, the looking at what's really happening, the grief for some. The language we use around this is really important about how it's accessible. But literally truth telling from us in people's assemblies, us testifying what is our truth. Or in Joanna Macy's the work that reconnects in our regenerative culture, taking time to emotionally connect with what is going on, to the corporations and whatnot telling the truth about, or the whistleblowers, and that's one of the things we're going to be announcing very soon, is we're going to have lots of truth coming out. And that's when an amazing thing happens when we face our truths, is we step into a space of connection and joy and all of that, and from there we can begin to tell a beautiful story of what the world could look like, with more time, with more community, all of that. So that's a bit about messaging, and I'm sure I'm well tight on time. But that if you get that right, then everything else flows. So in planning and actions, are there many people here in this room who have been involved in actions? I think yes. Yeah. So if you're part of a media team, and we have I think is a 2-pager on this that just needs a bit of work, and we can share it. But we've done up something that is literally how to do an action on the minimum. So the pre stuff. You need your messaging document. Just get that 1-pager of what's your 3 or 5 points. Then what would a tweet look like? What would a Facebook thing look like? And just by thinking about it in advance, it means you put yourself in that place for when the action is happening, and then you can run, and you're much faster and agile. So from there, you can write the press release, or you can contact some journalists before, and get maybe embed in a journalist. So when we did the first action, which was a friendly, loving action to Greenpeace, saying, "Hey, Greenpeace, we love you, but we need to talk." We brought flowers, we brought cake. We had a few journalists embedded on that day. So we made sure we had somebody that was filming there, so it caught the interactions. We had the Guardian. Well, the Guardian, they didn't actually come, but they knew that it was coming. So it is build relationships with journalists, and one of the really cool things you do is take them for a coffee or whatever, and just these are people too who are going to be whose families who are being affected by the emergency. So really, some people will say, we'll go out there, the media can never be changed. I really personally do not believe that. And the media is a really important part to play in what is to come. And we've now seen so many journalists, take me aside or others aside and say, I'm one of you. And these aren't, these are fairly well-known journalists. So I know that in Bristol, wherever around the country, there are journalists who are they just want permission to be able to cover what XR is doing, because that's the story they really want to be telling. So call them up. The first rule of public relations, the biggest barrier was that I had to get over was actually just stepping forward and calling a journalist, and they're normal people. They've got the same concerns, and they want to hear about the XR story in general. That's really important. Where we care for them and their kids and whatnot. So ask them, do they have time to go for a drink? And that will change your whole relationship with the journalist. And it just means that you'll be able to talk to them as humans. And then you can embed them in actions, or you can talk to them about well, so what's happening in the newsroom or in features desk. How can we, what can we do for you to get a story there? Is there water? So. Sorry. So yeah, see the journalists. So one of the things we've done now is in national is with WhatsApp. And I know lots of you are probably really pissed off with WhatsApp, because I am. I have about 12,000 messages waiting for me. But actually, with my family, WhatsApp changed the way that we communicated, because we're often in 4 different places, my mum and dad and my brother. And it just by sharing photos and talking to each other all the time, we were much more present to each other. So we created a WhatsApp group for journalists, and loads of journalists. It's now full up, and we've got a second one coming. But all the journalists were like, they all want to be on this now. But one by one, it has changed how we communicate with them, because it means that rather than sending out press releases, which is a really formal way of doing it and very important, we can communicate with them just by sending them a picture or sending them a poem or just actually you should watch this podcast, or it just means that we can tell them as a group, 256 of the world of the UK's most important journalists, news and environment, about things they should be thinking about. And it's an incredibly powerful tool. Also very dangerous, because quite often people forget that it's the one for journalists, and then they write something in there, and the whole team goes like, oh my God. And yeah, a leak did happen because of that. So you use really, really carefully. Moving into the action. So make sure you get your press release and your messages and the journalists that you want together are there. In the action, what we've realized is you only really need 2 people from the media messaging team to actually be able to cover stuff. So we're beginning I hope to begin a star system, so we can really manage our burnout and not have everybody going to every action. So it's a 5-star is like all out. We need everybody on this. 1-star, maybe we just need a photo and a line, and that way we can manage expectations and our own time and energy. So, but at a minimum, I would have someone there to liaise with the press, a press person, but someone part of the press team, but also give them access to the Twitter, because then they can tweet. So and they can also so they've got 3 roles. That is dealing with the media, tweeting, and then working out actually who's the best spokespeople that we've got at this action, and really, connecting the media with those people. So that's one role, and the other is somebody from the social team doing live streaming, and actually live streaming is quite intensive, and I hear that we're working quite hard to make sure our live streamers don't just stand there with the camera, but actually are now reporting and getting across our key messages and stuff. And you can see it with some of our live streamers, such as Esme and Sophie, that you're there with them, and it's great, and it's and they're constantly dropping white because actually and they're constantly dropping the key messages, because quite often if it's a live action that's just happened or just starting, if we can get that out to the journalists via a press release and via the WhatsApp list, then the journalists, Reuters or whoever, they will get their breaking news story from that, if we haven't embedded them already. And it just means that bang, it's all going out and out, and it because they often contact us. Well, they contact us to say, can we use that footage? So there's those 2 different roles, and then there's another role which is for the content team, who is a filmmaker or someone to do photos. So, but that's if it's a bit of a more key action, and we've realized that we're sending out our content makers to loads of actions, and actually maybe it's not the best way, because a lot of that footage or the films that they do come later, which is good. But the videos or the photos they do certainly never get used by the media. So, we can manage their time better. And actually, maybe with those content makers, rather than them being in the action, we can do stuff with narratives or the different stories that need to be told. So one of the big stories that we need to focus on right now is the arrestees. 500 have been charged following April. And you're going to see more and more of those personal stories coming through, the truth, the heart. And some of the testaments that they've made in court have been extremely, extremely powerful. And that's what's going to connect with the people at home. And it's, that is the big treasure trove that we're about to really start working and telling it via the press, via content, via social. So then that's during the action. Try and get. We often have an off-site team who will be working on details of. So what they'll be on the phone to whoever's the press person saying what's happening there, how many arrests, and we always have a press release basically ready to go the moment that the action goes live, so that then all of the news desks have that news as it goes. So the key things: press release, a tweet, a photo, and live stream. If you have those four things all going, then you can go and make a cup of coffee, and just that the action is happening fine, and the news is out there. And yeah, that's if I'm at home, like where I quite often am managing kind of or looking at the overall media, until we get to that point, I won't actually sit back and relax. That's when I know we're good to go. So that's really kind of in action. Then you follow it through. You give the odd update. That's only a really important update, and then then we'll sometimes do a kind of a summary stuff. But actually, that's more for the media. They want the news, so it's really important. Actually, going back to a press release is always make sure to include the 5 W's. We've got resources on this. So the what, the where, the why, the when, the who. Those things, and it's a press release is shaped like a pyramid. As long as you've got those things in at the very beginning, and some quotes, some background detail, you're doing good. So for those people who are in local teams, we bought ages ago a resource Cision. So we've got access to global media lists. So if you need a media list for your area, contact us and we can get it and send it to you. So it just means that you have to make sure that if you're sending a press release, that you're actually sending it to the people who really you need to get to. Otherwise, it's otherwise there's no point. You just so actually, please get in contact. We've got all of the details. So so the on the XR website, rebellion.earth, if you look on the press page, then there's the contact details there. So it's, yeah. But yeah, it's an amazing resource and it needs to be used and we're paying money for it. So please, but that goes for around the world. There's a lot I could talk about, but I'm sure I'm well over time. Doesn't matter. So, yeah, I guess I mean, there's kind of the thing that goes. So the media are generally interested in news first. So put all of your focus into that first. But then you'll get to a point where you've broken through in the news, and this is happening across the board. So then we move more into the features stuff, which could be comment pieces or opinion pieces, you know, whether it's The Guardian or whether it's in your local paper. You know, don't be afraid to say would they accept a letter, sorry, an opinion piece. There's also letters too. And the more we have different people writing letters that don't all seem like the same like template letter, the more powerful it is. So there's also profile features too. So I really urge you to you know, go for that coffee with one of the journalists that works in the local place and just say, hey, what can we do? How can we do stuff for you? And also for websites, also for radio, all of those things, because you can really go so much further than the news. And also, you know, the way it usually starts is really hard to get that first piece of news, and then you get like 1, 2 a month, and then you're there present the whole time, and then you know, and that's when the comment and the feature stuff start up. And often the features, the people who are working on the features are often quite nicer than the news people. So in the Evening Standards, as an example, it's totally different teams. You know, that's not to say that the news people at the Standard ain't nice, but the way we need to communicate to them. But actually, the features people are quite often looking for more lifestyle kind of stuff. So that's you know, you can go and you know, do the softer kind of feature stories with them. They're different. So I'm probably just going to, so another thing that's really important is when you're doing that message is think about Q&As. What are the most difficult questions you're going to be faced with? And run through them and really have a brainstorm about them and then get the answers. I'm going to just finish off just by saying about kind of a little bit more coming back to messaging, because it's the most important, yeah, we've done the disruption, we're going to do more. What we've got to do is come from the heart and communicate this vision in the next bit going forward. But the most important thing, I think, at this time, and you touched on it, onto the lightness of when you're talking, is there's a kind of trickster element to XR, and I personally love it. You know, the journalists love it, that they don't quite know what we're doing or that we can shapeshift. So it's don't be afraid to be humorous on because humor in the face of adversity is one of the most powerful things. So across social, in dealing with the media, get those. So I'll give you one example. So when during the April Rebellion, it got leaked because on a WhatsApp somebody put it out about Heathrow, or actually I think it got sent to like 10,000 people, and of course, you know, it went public. So all of the media were calling us saying, hey, so we know you're doing Heathrow, what's your plan tomorrow? And there was lots of meetings in the office that day, and the kids, XR youth were present there, and they got asked, did they want to take it? And they went off, and they came back, and they said, yeah, we want to take it, but no adults. And they allowed me to go be there, which was it was the moment I thought I was going to be arrested, definitely because I was the only adult. But it didn't happen, and they really came from an emotional response in that. But what I want to say is, so that day before, when all of the media, the Sun, they're all after what are you going to do? And we in our press team and social, we were just like, holy, this is really like wow. And then just so happened that evening, David Attenborough's Climate Change: The Facts was on TV. So I was just like, well, so when you're under pressure, just take that moment to just step back and just remember the gravity of the emergency, the situation we're in. And this is probably one of the most important things for me is you know, when you're in that high stress situation, just take that moment and rest in your body and and think, well, hold on, we're facing an emergency, and we've got these journalists worrying about what we're going to do at Heathrow, and this small thing versus wow, what we're facing, and it just puts it back into perspective. So what we actually did was a really short, sharp statement that basically it was used just the words of David Attenborough, and that he was using to promote climate change. The facts. So the subject of the email said XR statement on Heathrow action tomorrow, and then it was David Attenborough saying, we face a da 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 da, and then we ended up just saying, watch BBC One at 9 o'clock tonight, and it was just we used the context that was happening around us. We didn't want to say anything about the action, but we just made sure it was front and forward for the media that this is happening. So it just, of course, they didn't cover it. They didn't say we did that, but there's an interaction that happens between the press people, the PR people, and the journalists, which is also a very interesting. You're not just communicating to the public using the journalists. There's something happening between us, and I think that if we can win them over, if we can communicate with them that on a deeper level, a disruptive level, create a little space to think about our future together, then we're creating an interesting dynamic and changing that relationship. So, yeah, I've talked a lot. Is there? Are we short in time? Yes. So, I think so too.
You hear Zion?
Yeah.
Folks, Ronan McNern. All right. It's been really hard to get him to do. It's been really hard to get him to do that, but that's really valuable. Xeon lights. So stay up as well, Daddy. So basically, we've got 10 minutes, all right? And Xeon has a lot of experience in doing media, but she's only just started doing media with XR in the past, month, 6 weeks, something like that? About a month, right? She's bloody everywhere straight away. It's been amazing. So I thought it would be lovely to get Xeon and myself and Ronan just to do a quick Q&A, because between the three of us, we're probably able to give you some pretty good answers. So, yeah, so.
I have a question. I run some of the media for Cornwall, for part of Cornwall anyway, Rebel Reports and Twitter. And it strikes me that on Twitter we are not doing as an organisation very well. When Greta puts out a tweet, it gets sort of 10,000, 20,000 likes. When XR puts out a tweet, it gets maybe 100, and PR like 1,000 likes. So it's obviously the personality issue there. But should we not create a personality or put somebody forward as a personality on the Twitter feed or something like that to enhance that aspect?
Okay, you're going to take that. So, can you repeat the question just for the recording?
Yeah. So what's your name? Paul. So Paul was just saying about. So let's say when Greta posts something, it gets an awful lot of retweets, whereas on Extinction Rebellion. Cornwall, you're talking about national, aren't you? Yeah, yeah. So there's about, I think, somewhere between 170,000 to 200,000 followers of the national Twitter at the moment. But I do think absolutely there's I think we've got a different challenge to Greta, and in that we've got that global network. So we've got the global. Twitter, which is a lot of being asked of it in terms of the voices from XR groups all around the world. But now we created a UK one, and then we have all of the regional and local ones, whether that's in London, like almost to the borough. So we had some teething problems in how that works. So, but it's now we've got what is becoming, I think, a slicker and slicker system about decentralising and ensuring that the news that happens in Cornwall can then get lifted to a national level, retweeted, so that actually the people will follow you rather than necessarily following the national, or ideally both. And it's so we're trying to build it so that it spreads rather than just having one one Twitter page that has got to deal with news from all around the world, because actually that's too much, and people do give out to us about too many tweets or whatnot. So we're trying to work that through. But on that, if there's anybody that's interested in getting involved in social, it's definitely one of the areas where we need more people. And there's a really good team developing. But it's unlike some other bits of the organism, it's going all the time. So we really need lots of people. And even if they've got a few hours here and there, it's definitely useful.
Yes.
A question about your.
Do you mind speaking into the mic while you're asking it? Okay, just so I can get it.
On the you said on the website there's access to like a media database, global in fact. Sorry, my question was, does that include specific journalists or news journalists or feature writers?
Thank you.
So basically, if you contact the press team, they'll be able to get those details for you. It's licensing stuff. We couldn't be able to put it on the website. So
Is it outlets or individual journalists?
Outlets, individual journalists, and details of what they like.
Okay, thanks. Sia?
Can I just ask how many people here are media coordinators? Just a few. So if you get access to that database and it has all your local contacts on it, I absolutely do what I think Ronan said, where you take them for a coffee. So I've done this in the Exeter group, which I'm a little bit active in.
The mic's just for recording.
And
so it's not for amplifying.
sorry, very quiet voice. And I met with a couple of journalists who work on local press in Exeter, and actually 100% on side, wanted to talk tactics about how to get more about Extinction Rebellion in their newspapers. So try to get the database and ping out an email, but try to meet up with them and try to make those networks in your local areas. It really makes a difference.
Brilliant, thank you. Yes. Sorry, I was going to reach besides behind you. Okay.
Is it to me?
You can ask us, but it's just so that.
Oh, right, yeah.
Hi, so I'm the media coordinator for Bristol, and during the summer uprising in July, we had the whole situation with the dad guy not being able to say goodbye to his father, and it all kind of blew up, and it was very negative, and it was really difficult to deal with. I was just wondering if you guys have kind of top tips on how you would have dealt with that situation if you had been doing it.
Yeah, fantastic question. Just in case people didn't hear that, the question is, so when they had the uprising in Bristol recently, there was a situation, a media situation where, because of a roadblock, someone wasn't able to get to their dad as he was passing, as he was dying. They weren't able to be at his bedside. So that became a situation where I think it was the radio station, wasn't it? So the radio station filmed a rebel young woman wearing the headphones, hearing that message, hearing that phoned-in message, and then going, what do you think about that? So she was really slapped really hard. It was an incredibly difficult situation, in which case I'll ask you two to answer it, actually.
I'm happy to.
Both of you, it'd be really good to hear it.
Okay. So this is the moment where it's really important to take that step back, and just if the media ask you a question, you don't have to respond immediately. You can take that moment to really think about it, and that is just a horrible situation. It was absolutely, and I was in contact with some folks, and it's really in that situation. So let's just say if there's been a fuck up, you apologize and own it. Stop. Don't talk about the emergency or anything else. It just feels like using that as an excuse. So if there's been a fuck up, we need to apologize and own it. Stop. Don't say anything else, because it's enough. Just own it, and be. It has got to be authentic and from here. Otherwise, there's no point. It's just I'm not in. We are not into making up stuff or to get the best message across. It's got to come from the heart. In this case, I remember we you know, we created, there was a second statement that was created slightly that was just actually addressing what had happened. And it was saying, we're really sorry about this. And then it gave that enough space. But then we also did talk about the emergency, because it is really horrible what we're facing. And then, you know, I would also reach out to the person in question, if it's possible, or to actually, because it, you know, and actually, I think the most important thing is rather than running away from this, we really need to lean towards it and say, you know, not from a let's make the most of this media opportunity, but actually, you know, by really talking about the hard things, we need to navigate through this, because what is coming down the road is really awful.
So I would add that. So I was at that Project Mushroom when that happened. It could have easily been me. It could have easily been me that the headphones could have been handed to. I thought Zoe did an incredible job. But it's difficult because, I absolutely agree. It was about apologising in that space. You don't apologise and say but, right? You just apologise, and completely that's what I would have done. But the report was really difficult because they said, do you still think, that was the next question, do you still think this is the correct action? And again, I think she handled it really well, and she really spoke from the heart. And I always say this to everyone. I know I'm a spokesperson and I do national stuff, but we're all spokespeople really, and we need to know what those messages are from the heart, because it could be you that's handed the headphones, right? And we need to lean into it and acknowledge, you know what, that we are sorry, and we're sorry whenever we have to cause this disruption, right? That's the bottom line. We are sorry all of the time. We're sorry that we have to carry this message because it hasn't been carried, because the truth hasn't been told by the government and the media and etc. So there, you know, it's really about, there isn't like a standard line in a lot of these things. It's really about acknowledging your own truth and what you're comfortable with saying, and finding your voice and finding your power, and realizing that your voice is really powerful, and you might be in that next viral video, you know, because somebody's handed you the headphones, and just own it, because we're all here because we're owning it, and we're all here because we're sorry, and we're all here because we're grieving. So I just say, you know, just remember we're all spokes in a way, and that, you know, Zoe did an incredible job, but that could happen to any of us. So
is the next talk here? Yeah. It's Shane Collins, fantastic. Right, well, folks, I just want to say thanks very much, Xeon. We caught you at the end, but thanks for all the work that you're doing, and thanks for your input here. Xeon Lights, ladies and gentlemen. Ronan McNern.
And Jamie Kelsey-Fry.